Welcome to Future Squared, the podcast all about corporate innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-empowerment. Future Squared brings you a double dose of innovation inspiration every week to help you and your company stay relevant in an era of rapid change and 10x your results in both your professional and personal life. Each week, I'll bring you corporate innovators, entrepreneurs, authors, keynote speakers, and thought leaders such as Steve Blank, David Allen, Brad Feld, Tim Harford, Karen Dillon, Jenny Blake, Neil Patel, Rand Fishkin, Pascal Finette, Ryan Blair, and Ash Moria, to name just a few. While every Friday, I'll bring you Fast Fix Friday, some quick, digestible insights to help you end your week on a high as you head off for the weekend. Future Squared is brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation hub school and consultancy based in Melbourne, Australia and Singapore that works with companies to help them adopt the mindset, methods and tools to navigate change and survive and thrive in an era of rapid disruption. If your organization needs help coming up with ideas, testing and turning ideas into reality, incubating teams, driving cultural change, or connecting and partnering with startups, then visit www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Welcome back to Future Squared. Today I'll be speaking with Mike Michalowicz. He founded and sold 2 multi-million-dollar companies before his 35th birthday. Confident that he had the formula for success, he became an angel investor and proceeded to lose everything. He then started all over again, driven to find better ways to grow healthy, strong companies. Among other innovative strategies, Mike created the Profit First formula, a simple and extremely effective way for businesses to ensure profitability from their very next deposit forward. Mike is now running his 3rd multi-million-dollar venture, Profit First Professionals. He's a former small business columnist for the Wall Street Journal, is a former MSNBC business makeover expert, popular keynote speaker on innovative entrepreneurial topics, and is author of Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, and The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, which BusinessWeek deemed the entrepreneur's cult classic. Mike is also a guest lecturer for collegiate entrepreneurial programs such as Babson, Boston College, Columbia, Copenhagen Business School, Emerson, Harvard, Penn State, Pepperdine, and Princeton. His books are in the core curriculum for entrepreneur students at Pepperdine, Carnegie Mellon, Stanford University, and universities across the country. So with a CV like that, I just couldn't wait to bring you the one, the only, Mike Michalowicz. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program, and you're joining us all the way from sunny New Jersey, USA.
Yeah, absolutely true, minus the sunny part. It's overcast and rainy, but a big shout out from across the pond to you.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate the shout out. And before we get into the world of Profit First and, well, not so much debits and credits, there's something much more important I wanted to talk about, and that's your love of 80s hairbands.
Yeah, AC/DC, thank you, Australia, is awesome.
Not quite a hairband, though. I would never call them a hairband.
No, you're right. No, you're totally right. They're not a hairband. No, you're right. So Def Leppard, Motley Crue, those bands, I go crazy over them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Love those bands, grew up on those bands, so that's why I was very keen to explore. So what's your favorite 80s metal band? Let's just get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's definitely Def Leppard. That was my favorite.
Awesome.
Yeah. Their new stuff I can't stand. It's Pyromania and before, the really early stuff.
Yeah, so not even Hysteria? All the real...
No, not really.
Too commercial?
Yeah, too commercial.
Yeah.
Pyromania was commercial, but it still had the edge.
Yeah.
That's my favorite album.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, we won't digress too much into the world of 80s hairbands. For our audience who might be unfamiliar with you, Mike, what's the 2-minute overview of the Mike Michalowicz story?
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur of now 20 plus years. I started a couple of businesses, had the good fortune of selling some businesses, one to Fortune 500, another to private equity. I run one now. But I think that's kind of the CV, the bullet points. And I'm a full-time author. I've written 5 books now, and I just got engaged by my publisher to write my 6th. But again, that's a CV, meaning that those are the bullet points that we all look at that goes onto a resume. Mm-hmm. But the real story below it is my struggles. I built businesses, but as I was building them, I was not profitable. I was terrified. I didn't know how to pay the payroll for my employees. I had to refinance my house and the fear. I had great ideas that went nowhere and collapsed. I had those 3 businesses that were successes, but I also started 10 businesses as an angel investor that all collapsed within 6 months. So my story, I think, is the more typical entrepreneurial story. There's a couple of nice highlights. There's a lot of challenges and darkness throughout. And that's why now, why I run a business, truly I'm a full-time author. I travel and speak and write constantly, really to fix my own challenges that I faced and hopefully serve some other entrepreneurs that are facing the same challenges that I went through.
Yeah, and on those challenges, I did mention this in the pre-recorded intro to Mike Michalowicz, where we talked about how you sold a couple of companies for multi-million-dollar valuations, and then got into the world of angel investing and lost everything before you reevaluated your approach,
including my mind and my soul. Once I sold my second company, I was a millionaire in my early 30s, and I was like, look at me. I am the king of entrepreneurship. I really became a dick. I mean, just a big egotistical dick. And I lost all my money, and I attribute it to the big guy upstairs that I think it's a lesson I needed to learn. And it really cleared out that dark side I didn't realize I had, that ego, and it reset me. It was painful. I don't ever want to go through that hard lesson again. It was brutal, but it woke me up that, it's not about the stuff we have. It's not about those trappings. There's a saying that, the people who care don't matter and the people that matter don't care. And what it woke me up to is, I believe at least for my life, it's my need or my purpose on this planet is to have impact, to serve others. Now, here's the irony. As I've focused all of my efforts on serving others and caring for entrepreneurs, it's returned to me in tremendous revenue. And what I think that translates to in profitability, and what that translates to is sustainability. The more money that flows in now, the bigger impact, the greater ways I can serve others. And it started and it continues to be a nice upward spiral.
Yeah, what you mentioned there about giving back, creating impact, helping entrepreneurs, it's actually come back to you by way of revenue. And reminds me of a famous Zig Ziglar quote when he talks about, if you want to have anything you want, you've got to help other people get anything they want. And then it will come.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's it.
Oh, I love that. Great. So you mentioned you've just released your 5th book, Profit First, which is a simple system to transform any business from cash-eating monster to money-making machine. I love that tagline. It's currently one of the highest-ranking books in the finance and accounting categories on Amazon. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That, Mike. But just so we don't lose 90% of our audience, I will caveat that by saying that the book is definitely not about debits, credits, and ledgers, and explores what you call a behavioral approach to accounting that you've developed, because we all know that accounting is logical, but humans are anything but. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, like you just said it, Steve, like I'm ready to tune out. The second you start talking about debits and credits and ledgers and all these things, I'm ready to tune out too. What I found was that the way I managed money was not unique to me. It was actually very typical. Now, let me tell you what I don't do. My accountant says, read the profit and loss statement, the income statement, read the ledgers, read the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, tie them in together, know the metrics, know your KPIs, key performance indicators, your budgets, and so forth. Run the OCR, the operating cash ratio, blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you, the second he even opens his mouth, my eyes roll back in my head and I am not listening. I zone out. Here's what I really do. I log into my bank account. I see how much money I have, and then I trust my gut on decisions. And it frustrates the hell out of my accountant, but I don't do the numbers. I just make sure money comes in, and I run my business off my bank account. Well, it's never worked. I've never been profitable. That was the other element. I grew these businesses. I never made money until I sold them. And so what I did is I realized that when we try to change our habits, when we try to do something differently, it's extraordinarily hard. It's really hard to do. So instead of changing my habits, I wondered, could I develop a system that allows me to continue to log into my bank account and run my business that way? And that's what Profit First is. It's a system of behavioral cash management. It allows us to stay the same. It just puts these automatic guardrails around our behavior. And now our behavior that before was resulting in bad things, no profit, now results in great things, profit.
And on putting into place those systems, I mean, let's touch on the formula first, then we'll talk about the systems, because I think understanding the formula is critical to the rest of the conversation. And you've effectively taken the traditional financial accounting formula, which is revenue minus expenses equals profit, and you flip that on its head. And what you're proposing is sales minus profit equals expenses.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, where you're effectively putting profit first. So for our audience who probably are thinking, what does he actually mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. So this is already our first little behavioral understanding we need to achieve. What we prioritize, we address. What we deprioritize, we actually ignore. Another way said is what comes first gets our attention. What comes last gets ignored. My favorite example is with health. If I was sick and I went to the doctor, and the doctor says you really need to change your diet, you need to get healthy immediately, or you're going to die, I will not come out of that doctor's office and say, starting today, I will put my health last. What I will say is, starting today, I will put my health first. And you see, what comes first matters. What comes last is irrelevant. And what happens, and this is a subconscious level, but when we put profit last, meaning sales minus expenses equals profit, it's actually ignored. It's something that we don't address every single day. We look until the end of the month, or more often the end of the year, and say, was there any profit? No. Darn it. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. And we use soft terms for putting it last. We call profit the bottom line, final take, the year end. And what we do put first is sales and expenses, right? That's right in the front of the formula. So we say, but we got to sell. Sell. And then expenses, we don't like to use the word expenses. We prefer the word growth. So we got to sell. Now let's invest so we can grow, sell, grow, which basically we're saying sell to cover expenses, incur expenses to sell more to cover the more expenses, and we stay stuck in this trap and profit never happens. What I'm saying is by slipping the formula, logically or mathematically, it's the same. We're just switching variables around. But behaviorally, it's radically different. Now I'm saying we sell and we immediately take profit. Sell, immediately take profit. And when you do that, we have to run our business off the remainder. And what we're doing is reverse engineering profit because we've taken our profit first.
Yeah, and you've drawn parallels in some of your blogs on this topic between that healthy and fit lifestyle and a healthy and fit business. And like you would with, say, eating small plates and small portions, what you're saying is put aside a percentage of money in a profit account, which you can't access. It's a separate account, maybe even in a separate bank. You haven't got debit cards, which you can go down to the automatic teller machine and take that money out straight away. Put aside some money for salaries, put aside some money for tax, and then whatever is left, you can actually use on the actual expenses.
That's exactly right. It's called apportioning. And the analogy I like to use is a dinner meal, a big meal. When you have family over something, I don't know, Steve, how it works at your house, but I suspect this is something like it. Family and friends come over, the big meal comes out, and out comes the serving tray with the meal. And everyone oohs and ahs at it. Here in the States, we celebrate Thanksgiving. Everyone takes out their cameras and takes pictures of the big turkey on the serving tray. So whatever food's on the serving tray, that's what everyone oohs and ahs at. But no one eats off the serving tray. Like, you don't say, hey, everyone, just dive in, eat whatever you want. Whoever's the hungriest, just take the food and run with it. Instead, what we do is we apportion the food, meaning we take from the serving tray and we give everyone a serving. Now, the reason we do this is to ensure that everyone has something to eat. Now, in our business, the problem is we usually have one serving tray. It's our checking account. It's our primary checking account. All the deposits go there. All the bills get paid out of there. All the money flows to that one thing. And what we're telling our business is, hey, business, here's the serving tray of money. This is all we got. Just eat off of that tray. Take everything you want, which would be foolish with food, and we never do it. And it's absolutely foolish with money, but we do. So what's the system we set up that actually starts controlling that behavior of spending every penny and setting up what I call these small plates? Literally, it's checking accounts. Go to your bank, set up additional checking accounts. Then, when money flows into your primary checking account, starting today, it only acts as a serving tray. We will take that money out of that checking account and apportion percentages. A little piece goes, or a nice piece goes to profit. Another piece goes to owner's compensation, paying you as the owner. Another portion will go to taxes so we can pay our tax liabilities. And another portion will go to the operations of the business, operating expenses. But now that we've pre-allocated money to the different plates, we know how much money is available to serve that purpose.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And on your book, you've mentioned 4 simple principles to simplify accounting and make it easier to manage a profitable business. Can you talk through those principles?
Yeah, so the first principle we just touched on. So principle 1 is these small plates. Here's the objective. Go to your bank, set up multiple accounts. No longer are we going to just work with one account. We're going to see money pre-allocated. This, by the way, is the envelope system. Steve, I guarantee someone in your family tree did this. My mother did this. money came into the household, my mom would divide it up into the food account, another one for the rent for the apartment or house, another one would go to the give back to the community, another one for emergency. The same idea. The second principle is the sequence we do things. Most businesses, the first thing we do when money comes in is we pay our bills. That's actually the wrong sequence. Because now we're serving that formula of sell, expense. Remember, profit comes first now. So the new sequence is simply this. When we have any sale, and I don't care what size it is, first a portion, meaning put a little piece in the profit, a predetermined percentage in owner's comp and so forth. Then, and only then, do you pay bills out of what's available in the operating expenses. Mm-hmm. And if you can't pay your bills out of the operating expenses, that's telling your business you can't afford those bills. That's one to write down. If you can't pay your bills, that means you can't afford your bills. You must stop it. Now, the problem is before we used one account, we used up all the money in the account. So we could just eke by. But now that we're taking our profit first, we're allocating it first, we actually are reverse engineering our profit, and our business is telling us immediately to sustain this profit you're now taking, you have to cut expenses, you have to increase margins, you have to improve your business. So it's great direct feedback. Principle 3 is to remove temptation. Now, here's the situation. We will start moving money into these different accounts, including the profit account. Money in that profit account will start accumulating. It's just sitting there, at least for now. The problem is, at a certain point, we may kind of fall victim to temptation. We need to pay our bills. We don't have enough money. We look at that profit account. There's money sitting there. We say, well, why not just borrow money from that profit account and transfer it to my expenses? Which, by the way, defeats the entire system. Mm-hmm. We're saying, well, it's a shell game. We'll put money in profit, but it really isn't profit. It's expenses, and we move it back. So to avoid that temptation, we're going to set up a holding account at a second bank. The goal of this bank is for it to be actually inconvenient. We don't want easy access to it. When we allocate money to profit, we're then going to invoke a transfer of that money at our primary bank from the profit account to this secondary bank so that the money is now in the profit account there and it's out of sight, out of mind. As we reserve money for taxes, we do the same thing. We transfer taxes to the second bank. And the goal here is you work with your primary bank. You can't see the money that's piling up in profit because it's been transferred over, and you are forced to make do with what you have. Remove temptation, out of sight, out of mind. And then the fourth and final principle is the frequency we do things. Most businesses are very reactionary. Money flows in. We look at what money's in our checking account. We see we have money. We spend it. We see we don't have money. We panic and we start collections. We try to sell anything to anybody. We're very reactionary. And our business goes through these peaks and valleys. Cash rich, cash poor. Cash rich, cash very, very, very cash poor. And we want to now alleviate that by getting into a rhythm. And this is something from the diet industry. A lot of people say, don't eat 3 meals a day, eat 5 meals a day because it averages out the caloric intake. Smaller meals more frequently actually reduces those peaks and valleys of being too hungry and overeating. So what we do in our business is always, money goes into the income account. We allocate it out. We always allocate to profit first, step 2. We then remove the temptation, step 3. And step 4 is we do this entire process once a week or once every 2 weeks. Depends on the type of business you have. I found for most businesses, once every 2 weeks or twice a month is optimal. And what we will do is we allow the money to pile up in our income account. We're receiving money, that serving tray. Then at the trigger day, sometime during the month, we transfer the money out, and only then do we pay our operating expenses. We do the sequence once every 2 weeks, and it'll get us into a rhythm. We'll see what bills we truly can afford, and we'll know how much money our business is truly generating because we'll see the money accumulating before it allocates out.
Yeah.
That was hyper speed, but that's the 4 principles.
No, that's great. And it sounds as if you're talking about the business effectively being on a diet of sorts in order to maintain, to be fit and healthy. So we're just going to keep running with this health and fitness sort of analogy. But on the point of removing temptations, makes perfect sense to me. I'm big into my health and fitness, and I've removed, gluten and a lot of bread from my house and carbs and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes, to be fair, I just really want some corn chips, but I end up having some tuna or something instead, and it doesn't quite hit the spot, but nonetheless, it keeps me lean and healthy, which is great. Now, on removing that temptation, so what happens if, say, a business is facing, maybe they've been presented with a particular type of opportunity, but they've set aside income into all these different accounts. They can't access it. They've only got so much in their operating expense account, and this particular opportunity requires a bit more. And there is some conventional wisdom out there that suggests, hey, you've got to spend money to make money.
Yeah,
What
oh,
happens
totally.
then?
Yeah. So I'm always hesitant about opportunities because so many opportunities are bad.
Yeah.
And that's why most businesses struggle check by check. We pursue tons of opportunities. And they're not usually these big grandiose things. They're like, oh, maybe I should spend a few $1,000s on Facebook ads and see what happens. Oh, that didn't work. Darn it. Let me get some automated email campaign. That didn't work. Damn it. But we try all of these quote unquote opportunities. Well, here's how I define an opportunity. An opportunity is something that is guaranteed, or at least at an extraordinarily high probability that it will return the cash plus a profit within a short time span, usually 60 to 90 days. If I see something in my business like, oh, I have a client that is approaching me and they want me to develop a new product for them, and they're going to pay me 10 times the investment plus that I need to make, plus I see other clients that want to do this, I will first call those other clients and say, hey, I'm thinking about developing this. Would you pre-order it? They say yes. My first client says yes. Now I'm guaranteed that revenue. That's the one and only case where I will actually go to the profit account, transfer it over, because now I'm multiplying my profit. I'll infuse it in the business so I can make that investment, but I have a guaranteed return. So the caveat is be very, very critical of how you define an opportunity. If it isn't bringing cash in, I'm not saying cash. If it's not bringing true guaranteed profits within 90 days, it might not be an opportunity.
I guess that flies in the face of a lot of the rhetoric or the philosophies of venture capitalists out in Silicon Valley who, back businesses, throw millions of dollars into them, and these businesses might build up to multi-million, if not multi-billion-dollar valuations in the case of the likes of Uber and WeWork and these companies, but a lot of them are yet to turn a profit. And I know Amazon for many, many years didn't turn a profit until recently because they just reinvested into revenue, into growth, into other operating units, into other business lines. What's your view on that world? Obviously, I believe that in Silicon Valley, it seems like there is a massive tech bubble. Some of the valuations are crazy, 50 times PE ratio, sometimes up to 400 times PE ratios in some cases, which is absolutely crazy. And we're seeing that with Twitter now, where we had this huge PE ratio multiple of something like 400 to 1 at one point, and now people are saying, is Twitter dying? It's not making any money, and it's on its way out. So, but in some cases that does work, where you just are investing so much into revenue, into growth, into eyeballs, into brand, and then eventually you start making a profit. So, is there? I'm keen to explore this because I think the profit first formula makes a hell of a lot of sense. It just seems that there is some friction there with this other philosophy, which is grow.
Grow, totally. And you said the magic words. You said, and sometimes it works, right? So those investors are professional, or they're professional gamblers, and sometimes it works, but the majority of times it actually doesn't. So for them to be successful, they must have a large enough weapons cache of cash. They must have enough reserve of cash that they can afford to lose the majority of the time. The entrepreneurs I work with, the other 99%, if you will, can't afford losing. Listen, if you're sitting on enough money where you can start a business and the business falls flat on its face and you can do it again 10 more times over, then that's a good strategy, because that's what these investment individuals are. They've made their millions and now they're using a small portion to see if they can amplify it. That's a calculated risk where they are in the position to afford 100% loss and still come out without a dent to them.
Yeah.
The majority of entrepreneurs I talk to, this is our one shot at it. If this doesn't work, I have no other means. For the rest of us, for me, I got to be profitable from day one. And I've tried the investment side. Once I made my millions, I said, I'm going to become an investor. And that's where I lost literally everything. I'm not a sophisticated investor. That's not my expertise. So I don't do it anymore. I also warn people, don't fall for the illusion of Amazon and Facebook and Google. Those are the names we all recognize, but those are absolutely the anomalies. They were in the right place at the right time. They connected the right people. They had the right strategy. Everything lucked out. It worked out. But the vast majority of entrepreneurs won't have that. The vast majority of us, it's a slog. It's a fight every single day. And the only thing that's going to keep you fighting forward is profit. Profitability translates to sustainability. And so many people say, well, if I could just find an investor. It's hard to find an investor. It is so hard to find an investor. If you do find one, I'll tell you what's really appealing to an investor: a profitable business, because they know that the formula is already working. So profit is to your advantage, even if you're seeking out an investor.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the way you handled that question, Mike, because I couldn't agree more when it comes to the fact that professional investors, they have to play the numbers game. And if you're a startup or a small business and you've got some funding, a lot of entrepreneurs I see misinterpret that as the promised land. Hey, we raised funding, we're successful. And that is really, good luck to you. If you did raise funding, that's great. That's step one. And effectively, you've just become part of that numbers game. You're a statistic. And like you said, 99% of entrepreneurs aren't your Facebooks, aren't your Ubers, aren't your Amazons. And I think the actual stat that seems to be universal around the world is that 95% of startups fail.
That's right.
It's usually the funded startups because...
it's funny. I got a call from a guy who got funded. Is this a funny story? He called me a week ago and said, yeah, we burned through our first 2 million. We're looking for our next tranche. And I grabbed the phone. I said, hold on, you burned? I literally used the word burn. He's like, well, of course I didn't light on fire, but I'm like, you spent it like you were burning it? He's like, yeah. Now his full job is to find people who are willing to keep putting money in this. He's not an entrepreneur. He's a guy who raises funds. He's like trying to get donations. He's running a charity here. It's crazy that when we as a business, and I'm talking from personal experience too, I've raised money. When I've raised money, I realize now in retrospect, my mentality around that money changed. It's not my own pocket. It's someone else's money. And spending someone else's money is so easy and so easy to justify. Oh, yeah. I need the big space. I need the impressive car to impress prospects. All nonsense. All nonsense.
Yeah, exactly right. And whenever I see an entrepreneur who hasn't raised money, they... if they're smart about it, they're way more diligent with where every single dollar goes.
Yeah,
and
totally.
But by doing that, they spend their time figuring out, especially if they're quite early stage, what that product market fit looks like, what the right business model is, getting that right before hiring staff, before investing in an office and all the other stuff that comes with it. They're probably lean, working out of a co-working space somewhere or even working out of home, getting all the fundamentals right before going out and splashing cash. But if you raise that funding up front, like I've seen so many startups raise, say, $500,000 to $2 million, and they just hire a team of 10 people. It's like, do you need a team of 10 people? Most of them haven't got product market fit yet, but they're hiring all these marketing people to amplify a message that hasn't even been honed yet.
Right. It's a sure sign for disaster.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, let's jump across to the corporate world. So, these concepts are quite... I know you tend to work with entrepreneurs and small to medium enterprise, Mike. Would you say that these concepts could find a home in the corporate world, in big business?
Yeah. So in my book, I even talk about a public company I worked with. Now, I can't disclose their name, and I didn't include it in the book, but how they implemented it was interesting. So they approached me, this company. I met with the president of this public company, and they just were not nearly as profitable as their shareholders nor the management team wanted it to be. So I told him about the profit first mentality or the profit first system. And what was funny, he said, I can't do this. I said, well, why not? And he said, I can't tell our shareholders that when we make a sale, we immediately take our profit out. He goes, that's like the antithesis of how you run your business. You have to follow the accounting system. And I said, well, that's not working for you either. Maybe there's some middle ground. So what he did is fascinating. He took profit first. He implemented the system, but he basically told no one about it. What they do is when they get a project and they work in, they make defense systems. When they make the service and order, they'll get an order, say, for $5 million. This will then get transferred over to a project manager. They'll tell the project manager, you got an order for $4.5 million. They've literally taken out 10% and they tuck it away. And the project manager now believes they have a $4.5 million project. And guess what? They get the project done for, roughly $4.5 million plus a little profit sometimes or a little loss. But because the company's already taken the profit out of the budget, the project manager doesn't know, they skyrocketed in profitability. So it can be used in the company. And it's funny. It's just such a little tweak. It's a little mind shift. But we're human beings and we react to that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And, when I was researching the Profit First framework in anticipation of our interview, Mike, I did set up a meeting with my co-founder and said, hey, we need to think about setting up a few extra accounts and sending revenue in all these different accounts, so we're not spending money on, hey, we need this thing in the office and we need that, and hey, should we hire someone to come on as a part-time growth hacker and whatever else, what have you.
Right.
And it's so easy to make those decisions and justify them as, hey, we need to spend money to make money and grow. But no, that makes perfect sense. And I think for a lot of our audience, it is more or less a cross section of corporate executives as well as entrepreneurs of small to medium enterprise. So I think that example you just gave of public company will be quite helpful. So I wanted to touch on one concept from one of your previous books, Mike, which is a cult classic called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. Love that title. And you talk about 3 sheets of paper you need to launch and grow a business. Just for the entrepreneurs listening, can you tell us what those 3 sheets are?
Yeah, wow. God, you're doing such a throwback. That book is over 8 years old. So one of them is you need what's called a tacking strategy or a prosperity plan. And what this plan is simply the X on the map of where you want your business to be. Mm-hmm. It's the vision. And the problem that I think that many businesses have is we write the traditional business plan and it says, we're going to be a $5 billion company in 4 years. And this is a pessimistic view. The reality is no one can project their revenue or how their business is going to run. Because if you could predict your business 5 years out, you probably could predict a public company one day out. And if you can predict the health of a public company one day out, you're going to win the stock market because you'll know where the stock is going to go. So instead of writing that plan that's step-by-step of how you're going to be that $5 billion corporation, instead put the X on the map of what your business looks like, how it's serving your clients. What kind of revenue is it generating? But what's the vision of where you want it to be 10 years out? Mm-hmm. Then the second sheet is the tacking strategy. This is the tactical execution on a very short period. Tacking is a term from the sailing industry. What we do in sailing is you put an X on the map, the point on the horizon of where you want your boat to go, but then you have to leverage the wind, you have to navigate around obstacles. So you actually take a zigzag pattern. You move forward a few hundred yards, you realign your boat with that X on the map, you push forward, you realign, you kind of zigzag, and you inevitably get to that destination in a zigzag pattern. Well, our business, now we have the X on the map, we want to move forward in short 90-day increments. What do you need to do in the next 90 days to make as much momentum toward that X as possible? Mm-hmm. What obstacles are you facing? What challenge are you doing? Push forward. Then after 90 days, you sit down for your quarterly. Our company, the quarter's ended, has our quarterly this week. We are sitting down as a company and we are realigning our corporate ship. What did we do successfully? What has changed in the environment? What do we need to do to push forward again? And we're zigzagging our way to our X on the map. And the third and final is the daily metrics. Every single day, we have a company meeting in our daily huddle. There's only 8 of us. We're a tiny company. We sit down, we look at the numbers on the board and say, how are the critical metrics, health metrics going? One of them for us is inquiries about our services. If we see a dip in inquiries, that's a red flag. We're doing something wrong. Or is the message not getting out? What caused it? If inquiries are up, we say, what are we doing right? What can we do more of? So there's certain metrics we measure on a daily basis. And among those 3 things, the prosperity plan, the X on the map, the tacking, the short 90 days, and the daily numbers, you have the 3 sheets you need to keep your business moving forward.
Yeah. That's great, and it aligns with one of Jeff Bezos's quotes, which is be firm on your vision, but flexible on the path you take to get there. Very, very much aligns with that, and also has some similarities with the whole customer discovery lean startup philosophy, which has taken off in the last 6 or so years, which is all about experimentation, trying things, seeing what works, seeing what didn't, making tweaks, and then over time getting closer to that target of where you want to be. So makes a lot of sense there. So you also host your own podcast. You've jumped into the world of podcasting, and that's called Profit First. Is this something that you've released as a companion to the book, or?
Yeah, it started off that way. I thought I was going to do maybe 10 episodes to share some insights. We're now 140 or 150 episodes in. I run now a sister one, another podcast. And, podcasting is amazing. When I started, the first month, maybe, one download a day, maybe 3 here, 4 there. It's slowly but consistently grown. This morning we had 5,000 unique downloads, and which was a spike because we had it released, an episode released this morning. But we're averaging over 2,000 listeners a day, and it's kind of opened my eye to the power of podcasting. It's an intimate experience with the listener. I mean, right now, Steve, as we're doing this, it's me, you, and the one listener listening in. And now I know there's thousands of listeners, but for each individual, it's them and the two of us. They're the fly on the wall. And it's a great way as an author. It's a great way for your readers to learn about your personality, your energy, your passion, and for them to explore what you're teaching in your books further. So I love podcasting. I can never see giving this up, at least not for the foreseeable future. We even at my office, we set up a full studio now. We got 4 microphones. We bring guests in. It's a blast to do.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun. We've been running Future Squared for about 15 months now, and having access to amazing people, constantly learning,
That's right.
getting a message out there to. I mean, we're at about just under 100,000 listens a month now, and
wow.
It's hard to get that kind of reach. Not only that kind of reach, I mean, it's easy to put an ad on Google and, hey, our display ads being seen by tens of thousands of people, but who are you actually engaging? I mean, we're actually engaging people here. They're listening. Like you said, every person's experience is different, and they're listening for, say, 30, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever the case may be. And it's just them, you, and me. And that's a whole different level of engagement.
Oh yeah. Like I'll go to an event to speak or something, and because of your podcast, someone come up and say, "Hey man, I'm a Def Leppard fan too."
Yeah.
Like you get this intimacy that transcends books, transcends even like video. It's a weird thing. It's such an intimate format or media. I love it. I love it.
Definitely. And people can check that out on iTunes and all good places you can find good podcasts. So that was a Profit First podcast. And look, I think we want to jump into our lightning round, Mike, and we can then talk a little bit more about where people can find you. So are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
So let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll. Def Leppard style, Phil Collins style. He's like, speaking of healthy and fit, man, he's like way more shredded today than he ever was in the 80s.
He's incredible. He's incredible.
He's nuts. Anyways, I digress as usual. So question number 1, Mike, is if you could work for any company at any stage of the company life cycle, be it in the 1800s, 1900s, or today, who would it be and why?
Well, any kind of business, it would be modern times. I would like to work with Uber, or actually, I take it back. I like to work with Lyft, the Uber competitor. I think it's such an innovative platform, and I think this is the biggest advancement I've seen in the shared economy. I mean, there's Airbnb, there's all these other things, but it's such a radical impact. But there's one more thing that's happening that isn't happening to the other shared economy is cars are becoming automated. And it would just be fascinating to watch this transition. You can't automate lodging, at least not yet, but you can automate a car. And I think the next 5 or 6 years in Lyft and Uber and all these companies, it's going to be such a radical shift. I would love to go for that ride. No pun intended.
Yeah, makes sense. And I actually interviewed someone on automated, connected, and electrified vehicles. He called them ACE vehicles last week. So that'll be on the show soon, which is a fascinating conversation. Question number 2, Mike, is if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
I would probably ask George Washington, who I admire so much, for why and how did he give up the power that was given to him to start a country in a new way. I just find it fascinating. Power is so magnetic and so entrances people. I'm an entrepreneur. The more money that flows into my business and the more people that work for me, it can become this kind of hypnotizing experience. And so I get the trappings of it. How did he, who had the opportunity to be the king of a new country, say, you know what, that's not in the best interest of the country. I'm not doing that. Yeah. I think that's courageous and amazing. I want to learn from that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think George Washington was a fan of the Stoics and read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which was all about, not getting consumed by power. And you mentioned that at the top of the show where you said, it's not about the trappings, it's about giving back. And a poor man who is content with what he has is more rich than a rich man who always wants more because he's never content.
Oh, so true. So true. I didn't get that for so long. I'm happy I went through my experience of losing everything.
Yeah.
I needed that to really appreciate that. And it's true. It's so true, man. It's so true.
Incredibly true. I mean, I came out of the corporate world where initially, I was making 3-4 times more than what I made in my first couple of years as an entrepreneur, but I was so much more fulfilled, giving back and working on something that I loved, that I felt had purpose behind it rather than what I was doing previously. So that, for me, just brought home that message. And question number 3, Mike. I like to get into the heads of high performers and find out how they stay on top of their games. So do you have any rituals or routines to do that?
Yeah, no, I'm very ritualized. I mean, I wouldn't call them rituals when you look at them, but meaning go through a very organized schedule. So at least in the morning, I wake up at 5:30 every morning, or thereabouts. I don't use an alarm. I think that's actually a good thing, not to wake up to an alarm, but wake up naturally. So it's around 5:30 every morning. I exercise. So and with a neighbor, because if it was me myself, I wouldn't push myself. My neighbor is an athlete. He pushes me, I push him, and so it's elevated me. I've been doing this regimen for over 3 years now of continuous, regular exercise, and hands down, it's been the most important thing I do because it brings energy, it brings stamina, and I don't get sick too often. Now, I'm not like crazy. It's not like, if I go on vacation, I will take a week off. It's not like, I'm this hardcore workout guy, but exercise is key. Second thing is, I come in the office, I make my cup of coffee, and that's kind of my moment just to think and get my senses around me. And then I have a corporate huddle, a little business huddle. It's 8 of us, like I said. We sit in a circle, we stand in a circle, we look at our numbers, we give updates. But one cool thing we do in our huddle is at the end of every person's update, which they're only allowed to spend less than a minute on their update. So it's fast. It's bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. You then share a personal update. And it's connected me with my colleagues. I consider them friends. I would take a bullet for any of them. And I admire them tremendously, not because of their business acumen, which they all have, but because of their personal acumen. They're such good people. And if I didn't learn a little piece about them every day, I would never been aware of that. So that's powerful. And then, I like to fire down a glass of wine with my wife every night too, and debrief just on life itself. That's my rituals. In between that is, work like an animal.
Yeah. No, and I love that you've taken the concept of, daily stand-up or a corporate huddle and integrated the personal updates as well. So you can get to know everyone better and what they're actually doing outside of work. So you don't just see them as, this machine that cranks out work, but they're actually a person. And it's important not to lose sight of that when you're a leader of an organization in particular.
Agreed.
Awesome. Okay, so you actually have an organization that helps people implement the Profit First accounting framework, I guess we'll call it. What can you tell us about that, Mike?
Yeah, so when I wrote Profit First, I wrote the first version 2.5 years ago. I re-released it through my publisher, Penguin Books, only about 2 months ago. And throughout that time, ever since the first release, I've been getting inquiries, and now we're getting swamped with them from entrepreneurs who've read the book, want to do Profit First, and say, who's the accountant or bookkeeper that supports this? So when I got that first inquiry, that was the aha moment. I need to start an organization of accountants and bookkeepers who can support Profit First. So my organization is called Profit First Professionals. We are an international now organization of members. We, in Australia, I think have 5 or 6 members. In New Zealand. We were talking offline about the All Blacks. In New Zealand, we have a couple of members. And what they do is they work with local businesses and help those companies implement Profit First and make sure that Profit First works within the confines of, the local government and the national government, tax requirements, and so forth. It's a great way to properly implement Profit First, and it's a super great way to stay accountable to it, to make sure you're doing it properly and perpetually.
Great. And where can people find that online?
Just type in Profit First Professionals. It's profitfirstprofessionals.com.
Great. And where else can people find you online, Mike? Be it Twitter, LinkedIn, email, and so on.
So Mike Michalowicz is my name. It's a doozy to spell, so I'll give you some shortcuts. If you go to Google and just type in Mike, is my first name, and Mick, M-I-C, so Mike spacebar Mick, it will pull up
It'll
my
come
name
up.
in the drop down. It's the long Polish name. That's me. And you'll find me Twitter, Facebook, and you'll find my website. That is the mecca of everything. Free downloads of all my books are there. I'm a blogger. I'm a podcaster, as you know. That's all there. I used to write for the Wall Street Journal, and my 10 most popular articles are in the Wall Street Journal archives now.
Mm-hmm.
You can get them for free just by going to my website. And another shortcut too is if you can't or find me on Google, just type in Mike Motorbike. That was my nickname in high school. Go to MikeMotorbike.com. That'll forward you onto my website.
Love it, love it. I take it you rode a motorbike in high school?
No, that's the irony.
Whoa.
I didn't. I rode a 10-speed bicycle. I was a total nerd.
Love it, love it. Well, thanks again, Mike, for giving up some time to talk to the audience of Future Squared, and also challenge the status quo and the way things are always done around big business, small business, and startups. I think you've definitely touched on and introduced a concept that will get a lot of people thinking, and will get a lot of people bringing their colleagues together and saying, hey, maybe we should think about this. So thanks again for your time today.
It's an absolute joy. Thanks for having me on the show, Steve.
Cheers, Mike. Hey guys, it's Steve again. If you're picking up what we're putting down, we'd love it if you took just a minute of your time to like, share, or subscribe to Future Squared on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. It would mean a hell of a lot to the team here who work effortlessly to bring you thought leaders and experts on topics of corporate innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement on a weekly basis. As always, you can find more resources on innovation, including blogs, books, podcasts, videos, webinars, and tools at www.collectivecamp.us. If you'd like to connect with me on Twitter, you can do so at Steve Glaveski. That's Glaveski. Until next time, keep innovating. Future Squared out.